Good evening, YouTube. Sorry I've been away for a while. I have been dealing with some pretty crazy family stuff. Won't bore you with it, but yeah, it's been very interesting. I also, as you can probably tell from my voice, have been dealing with some allergies because it's that time of year and I'm allergic to everything right now. There will be no singing today, clearly. Anyway, I'm sure that you've all heard the news by now of the latest news report of yet another child sexual abuse case against the Jehovah's Witnesses, which has been decided in the victim's favor in Montana. Yes. The damages are $35 million. $35 million. That's a lot of money, y'all. And I'm sure there's going to be appeals, and I'm sure that the amount will be reduced, blah, blah, blah. But it's still going to come down to millions of dollars. And it seems like for the past decade or so, there have been more and more of these cases hitting the news and more huge fines and penalties. They just keep getting bigger, and deservedly so, I think, actually. And now we're starting to see, I think, the cracks in the facade of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. There's a shift toward technology and away from their tradition of printing. They're combining congregations, selling off real estate, including Kingdom Halls, upping the ante on the cult-like propaganda, actually. The magazines are less frequent. The meetings are less frequent. Just a lot of change, and not all of it good. In talking about propaganda, that's exactly all the recent convention videos are. They're very cult-like, and it's starting to get the attention of the rest of the world, how incredibly cultish they are. So pretty soon, I think that the Watchtower Society will run out of money at the rate they're going and probably go bankrupt. Now, there are only a few ways that this could go, at least as far as I can think. And option one, I think, would be that the governing body would try to keep up the facade until the bitter end and then do something truly insane, like telling all of their faithful followers to commit suicide, a la Jonestown or something like that. This truly would be the worst case scenario, but it's not entirely unlikely because they've already set the stage for it with that famous Watchtower article from 2013 when they said that true worshipers should be prepared to follow any instructions from the governing body even if it didn't make sense from a human standpoint. If they hadn't done that, I would probably say that this option would be incredibly unlikely. But yeah, that article still makes me nervous 5 years later. So anyway, option two, in my opinion, would be that the governing body siphons off as much money as they can to some sort of offshore account somewhere in Cayman Islands or something, and then just disappears with it, leaving all their remaining followers high and dry. Maybe they would even let the message be put out that they had been taken off to heaven and the end was imminent or something like that. I wouldn't put it past them. I would think that this option would be more likely, except that some of those guys are very elderly at this point, and maybe some of them actually believe in what they're doing. I kind of doubt it, but maybe they do. Who knows? Option three, which I think is probably the most likely, is that they will just fade into obscurity, their assets being sold off to pay their debts and fines, and maybe even some people go to jail. One can hope. Who knows what might be uncovered? Anyway, the fact remains that the organization does appear to be in decline. I mean, the writing's on the wall, and it has been for quite a while now. It's not a conspiracy. I mean, they're not going to be brought down by some massive effort by enemies or apostates or the devil or whatever. They are in a natural decline brought about by the fact that their entire organization is built on preposterous lies, and people are speaking out. People are telling the truth, and information is available now in a way that it never has been before. So people are thinking. People are doing the research before they show up at the Kingdom Hall, before they allow people to start a study with them or whatever. They're thinking, some of them for the first time, going out and doing their research and finding out what this organization is actually about. Y'all, religion can't stand up to that. Especially corporate religion of the Watchtower variety. It just doesn't work. So what happens to the everyday Jehovah's Witness when the faithful and discreet slave is no longer pumping out spiritual food? Imagine that the corporations are dissolved and it's over, just like that. no more meetings, no more field service, no more broadcasts and service meetings and whatever. What would your old friends and family do? What would you have done? What would I have done? I would have been like, woohoo, freedom. Unfortunately, though, I think that a lot of them would still believe to the bitter end. I know that my family probably will, even if there is tons of evidence to the contrary. They would still believe to the bitter end that this is the answer to some obscure twist on a biblical prophecy, and maybe they'd try to spin it somehow and make this the Great Tribulation. I mean, this is the world turning on religion. Time for the message of judgment. Woo! Because everything's a reason to prove they're right, no matter what. But then they'd just be like all the other crazy street preachers. A punchline. What would they do with all those carts? Would they have a giant going out of business sale? Like, where they sell all the fixtures and everything? I mean, those carts have zero practical use. Think about it. What could you possibly do with one? Besides stand on a street corner and, have some tracks there. What do you think that the hardcore believers would still do? Do you think that they would still try to hold meetings? Maybe they'd meet in a basement or a bunker somewhere, pretending to hide out like in their videos. How long do you think that they would last without the central organization to tell them what to think? How quickly would they devolve into a bunch of splinter groups and just be like the 32 flavors of Baptist or whatever? I think it would happen pretty quick, actually. I'm sure that there would be many who would wake up because rationally, despite the best laid indoctrination or brainwashing, things are really, really, really starting to not add up if you've been around for a while. Pretty much everything that I was taught growing up about the end times and Armageddon, it's all outdated now. Everything that I was told that I absolutely had to believe on pain of disfellowshipping was absolutely truth. I mean, the king of the north, the king of the south, the Gentile times, the four horsemen, the trumpet blast, all that crazy drug-addled bullshit, especially the generation that will never die, who are all dead now, all of that is obsolete this day and age. And the idea of the new light doctrine as an explanation is just ludicrous. I mean, why in the world would an all-knowing, almighty creator blatantly lie to his children in such a way? And then say, oh, I didn't mean that. I meant this other thing over here. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, at all. I predict that the witnesses are going to continue on the path that they're on. They're going to be very stiff-necked and puffed up with pride, as they like to say about certain other religions, and refuse to change their policies on child sexual abuse reporting. And I think that that's going to be what takes them down, their own hubris. They will continue to be beset by victims who deserve the millions of dollars after what they've been through. Those of us whose statutes of limitations have unfortunately run out will be behind them cheering, because finally somebody believes us. It's about time. I predict that the witnesses will slowly peter out until they're just another televangelist group taking advantage of vulnerable people. Ultimately, like I said, a punchline. My family will also, like I said, continue to believe until the bitter end, probably, and continue shunning me, because they'd rather believe a bunch of unethical old men they've never met than their own flesh and blood. Sad, but I am not expecting any change at this point. I would be pleasantly surprised if anything changed, but yeah, who knows how long all this will take. But this is the first time I actually feel like, oh yeah, it's happening.